De Dataloog is dé Nederlandse dialoog over big data, data science, machine learning en de datagedreven transformatie. Wij brengen de digitale datagedreven wereld dichtbij in het Nederlands en op een begrijpelijke manier. De Dataloog verbindt data scientists, consultants, technologiebedrijven, onderzoekers met elkaar. Onze uitzendingen bevatten ronde tafelgesprekken, diepte-interviews, toekomstverkenningen, mini-colleges over machine learning en verhalen van ervaringsdeskundigen.
We beginnen heel even in het Nederlands, Walter. Welkom in de Dataloog, Walter, vandaag op Big Data Expo.
Ja, te gek. Weer op een nieuwe plek voor mij. Het is voor mij de eerste opname hier op de Big Data Expo. Heel erg leuk dat we hier zitten op de stand. Ik kijk uit op allerlei andere stands en bezoekers die voorbij lopen.
Maar wij zijn eigenlijk het leukste, hè?
Natuurlijk.
Het is niet een kale stand, maar gewoon een stand met alles wat we gewoon ook hebben. En het staat er gewoon.
En dan die gasten die erbij zitten.
Ja, lachen. Goeie ja, nou ja. En vandaag ook. We're going to talk about a documentary today, isn't it?
Yes. We're joined here by two of the main characters in a new documentary produced by Data IQ called Data Pioneers. And we're joined here at the table by Kia IJsinga from TomTom and Bernardo Nunes from Growth Tribe. Welcome.
Welcome both in the Dataloog. So how do we get started? We've never talked about a documentary in the Dataloog.
So what's really remarkable about this is that 1 year ago, Romain from Data IQ got in touch with me and said, well, I have this idea to produce a documentary and I have this production company. I want to go around and interview some people. Who should we have? We already have a lot of people to interview. And do you have a location? So, well, why don't you just film it at our office? So the whole production crew came in, and what I noticed is that how thorough they went about producing the documentary. And then the end result was nearly 1 year later, it is there. So they put such a tremendous amount of work in this. And what's great about the documentary is that there's so many people also from the Netherlands. Kia, what did you talk about in the documentary?
So let's first, because we didn't mention the name of the documentary, where you can find it for the listeners.
Data Pioneers.
Data Science Pioneers, and you can find it on
datascience.movie.
Datascience.movie.
Yeah. You can find the trailer.
Yeah, you can. It's not fully available, isn't it? No.
There are some screenings. You can find them on Meetup, and I know there's one in TomTom. There's one in Growth Tribe. I think there are different locations in the Netherlands where you can watch the movie.
And today at Big Data Expo, there's a screening as well.
Yes.
In half an hour, so we're going to join them there. Okay. Can you introduce yourself, both Kia and Bernardo? Ladies first, of course.
So my name is Kia IJsinga. I work as a senior data scientist in TomTom. Actually, I have been working in TomTom for a long time. It's almost a year now. Before that, I was working at ABN AMRO Bank, also as a data scientist. And we are kind of a small startup within the company, and we try to help everyone within our department that wants to do anything with data or data science, basically in a very broad perspective there.
And what's your background?
I did a master in data science in Tilburg University.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
And you?
My name is Bernardo. I am head of science at Growth Tribe. So Growth Tribe is a training company. What we basically do is educate professionals that are native in analytics to become more business savvy, so they understand also the value propositions that data analysis can solve. And at the same time, we also educate the business savvy professionals to understand how analytics can be implemented at the company level. So I've been with Growth Tribe for 2.5 years now. I came from Scotland, where I was studying. Originally, I'm from Brazil, but enjoying it very much.
So you're creating kind of analytics translators?
Yes, one of the professionals that we try to, if you compare the skills of an analytics translator, we could say that the participant of our 6-month traineeship is able to do translation in that sense.
Yeah. So,
and how did you get in touch with Data IQ?
Well, it's an interesting story because around 2.5 years ago, we started to use it for data cleaning. the growth hackers actually in the company, they use it because it was a startup.
What's a growth hacker?
Yeah, so it's this guy that likes the tips and tricks. They don't think about the problem for a long time as we do as data scientists, and they try to find the shortcuts to grow a specific business metric, right? So they really like Data to cut the time spent on data cleaning. And when I joined the company to create the content of the AI for marketing and AI for business courses, they said, do you know this tool called Data This is a startup from France that's quite handy to clean data. And then I tested it and I said, well, this would work very well in the classroom as well. So with this kind of tool, I can teach a marketeer to do some prototyping on predictive modeling or clustering for data-driven personas. And we were not even talking about the data analytics translators, but later on this became the term, right? That the industry adopted from McKinsey and from the HBR articles. This professional that is not native in analytics, but is also able to compare, to evaluate a proposition that is based on some kind of machine learning or an experiment. Yeah.
So let's get to the documentary. For those who need to, that's the potential audience. Why should a data invested person or even watch the screening and what's your takeaway for them? Yeah.
Well, for me, I think there's a big hype for a couple of years already around data science, AI, all these terms. And I see a lot of businesses that want to do something with this technology, and I think it's very important to investigate if it can be of benefit of for your company, which I think in many cases it can be. But sometimes the terms are a bit misused, and I think in that sense the documentary can help because it really brings the narrative of people that work in this field and shows what are the possibilities, what are the constraints that we're facing right now. So that's why I think it would be valuable for people in this area to watch it.
One of the things I particularly liked about it at the beginning of the documentary, it starts with Turing. Indeed, the whole idea of data science and these models are from 1947, the oldest ones. I mean, indeed, what you say, it's a big boom and a big hype, as if, and people not savvy in this field tend to think it's all new, but it's not.
Yeah,
is it?
But for the first time, we started to have the combination of three factors that we haven't had yet together.
Bit close,
so, for example, the algorithms, as you said, they are not new.
No.
The first neural network is from the end of the 50s. But nowadays, we also have computing power that's much cheaper than 3 years ago. And we also have the unstructured data to train many of those algorithms. So when we combine these three things, this is what the lay audience needs to get educated on. Is that what is different is that the combination of these catalysts, what the consultants call the catalysts, means that they become the technology more accessible. And many of the blockers that we have in AI, they are also faced in other fields in different technologies as well.
Is it really these three elements that people need to educate on? Because if I watch the documentary and look at the opening scene, it's pretty dark.
Yeah.
So one of the questions they asked me was about the types of artificial intelligence. And most of the business applications are the things that are making people scared about their jobs, let's say, are part of narrow artificial intelligence. These are things that machines, they can do much better than a human, or they can outperform humans, but it's only in one task, right? And most of the demystification that we already cited here in the table is related with the fact that most of the buzz happens in the general intelligence approach, which we would have at some point machines that they can perform more than one task a million times better than a human.
Yeah.
So your takeaway is AI is narrow AI.
Nowadays, yes, very much.
Yes.
It's when you have one task that can be performed better by the machine, but sometimes it's not profitable to substitute the human by the machine.
Do you share, Kia, the dark opinion of the start of the?
It's not a dark opinion; it's awareness.
The awareness.
It's awareness, but it's all the things that have gone wrong with data and the public opinion about data, that it can be scary and it may take away all of our jobs.
Yeah. I think there are some fears that maybe the general public would have, or that the news brings, like evil AIs dominating the world, for example. And I think that's not the case. If I see what is happening in AI, I think it's very limited what it can do, and usually it can be good in one task only at the same time. However, I do think that there are other threats of how people use AI, for example, or the AI that we have right now that are still relevant, and you still need to look in that. Things like introducing bias into algorithms, preserving privacy when you're working with data, or using machine learning the way we have it now in just causes that are not good for the world. Mm-hmm. So I think there are still some threats, but not in the way that the news represents it most of the time.
Yeah. But you're in the middle of this industry, and you know everything about what's happening, and you know what to believe and what not. If you look at the documentary, and it starts with all these scandals, and then it paints a brighter picture of the future. Where do you think that we are as general public?
Well, we see this in the classroom, actually. Like many of the people who come to our courses, they come because they are or in a promotion state, as we say. They want to profit from the competitive advantage. Not only artificial intelligence, but there are things in data science related with experimentation, with the use of the Internet of Things, and all these things that are related with the biases and data collection. They also happen in other fields, not necessarily in machine learning, also in causality inference, in the Internet of Things. So there are people that they go there to understand and to profit from this technology. Mm-hmm. There are other people that they go because they have fear, right? And then the case there is to demystify, to show them the definitions, and to make them to do some exercises so they get more familiar. It's very similar to get a driving license, right? You don't need to build a car, but you need to know how fuel efficient is the car. You need to know how fast that car can go, and then you will preserve the safety of the driver, right? But we also eat food that was warmed in microwaves, and we don't know how to build microwaves. So that's very much the blockers that I would say end up happening.
The documentary is coined Data Pioneers. Kia, do you feel as a pioneer in the companies that you've been working for?
Well, I think a pioneer is maybe a bit too much, but it's definitely, we're really on the...
what Data IQ sees in you, so...
Yeah, I guess that's a compliment,
it is,
right?
Yeah.
I think we are one of the first people that are entering this field, and I think it's really new, and it's very new for businesses, and it's also very new to the public. So yeah, in that sense, we are pioneers. But I also see a big difference between, for example, the academic world and the business world, because the business world sometimes is not ready for doing things with AI. They just need some basic insights in the data that they have, or they need to collect the right data.
Give me a dashboard.
Exactly, yeah. And if you look at the academic world, or the guys that are working in Google DeepMind, for example, they're really doing like advanced stuff. So there's just a two ways there.
There's a gap in the middle, isn't it? The AI mature and deep learnings. On the other hand, do we have data in our organization? It's stored somewhere. Do you see this in your classroom as well? Yeah,
so I would say that the main gaps, they happen when you try to transform the descriptive analysis into something that anticipates the future. How to go from data dashboarding, visualization, to something that helps you to predict and find patterns in the data. So for that, you need a data scientist most of the time, or a machine learning engineer to do this kind of things. There is also another blocker, which is jumping from the predictive part to the prescriptive part. how do I build decision makers that are able to take decisions based on the information that was extracted from data. That's another block.
So again, for our listeners, there's you start with descriptive, then you end up with prescriptive. Can you explain this ladder to our listeners?
Yeah. So you can break any data project in these 3 steps. Obviously, there are other steps related with data engineering, data setup, data cleaning. But let's say the job that the data analysts would do, or the data related jobs would do, would be creating a summary of what has happened, the descriptive part. Yeah. And then you also want to create a model or some kind of tool that will help you to identify patterns and relationships, so you can anticipate which customer is a good lead, which customer is going to churn, whatever. Right?
The predictive part.
The predictive part.
Yes.
And this, even when you do that, you still have to communicate the results of this analysis to the rest of the organization. Then you also need a business savvy data scientist, or you need people that can translate this to other departments, and that's the prescriptive part. How do I make that deployable into a product, or how do I get requests from the product people that can be solved in the previous 2 steps?
Data science is all about making better decisions and actions.
Yeah, so that's why there is the science in the name. Otherwise, it would be just storytelling. I usually tell them.
Data hacking.
In the company at Growth Tribe, we practice a lot of storytelling, right? But I tell them, if you don't back this with some kind of data that was properly, tested and modeled, then becomes just narrative. And data storytelling is a combination of the narrative, the visuals, and also the procedure to solve a specific problem.
And the documentary looked at the point of views from all across the world. I think they went to Oslo, New York, Paris, Amsterdam, and many other cities. After watching the documentary, do you think that there's differences between the approaches that you've seen, or the perspective that have been shown? Kia?
Well, for me, actually, the issues and what people were running into were pretty similar.
Yeah.
Actually, and maybe that's because of
you recognized what was said by other people.
Yes, and I think a lot of companies in the Netherlands, but also outside in other European countries or even in the US, are struggling with the same issues there. And I really recognize myself in a lot of the things that were said in the documentary by other people.
Yeah, a good finding for me was from Ian Eichmann. He works for Zoopla, and he's also in the documentary. Yeah. And he talks about the frustrations of the data scientists. Like, that more than 2/3 of the projects, they end up not being deployed. And that was a common factor, I think. Also, when we met in London for the Egg conference, many of the data scientists in the documentary, they were there, and that was a denominator that we all found in our jobs.
And is that indeed one of the biggest issues for data science these days, that many products don't make it into production, are not adopted by an organization?
I think so. Yeah, I think the number one project or problem is that usually we don't have the data for the problem that we want to solve. But when we do, it's usually, if you want to create a successful data science project, you need 2 things. So you need one, business value, of course. So there needs to be a product manager or a product owner that's really asking for this, and there's a certain need. And there needs to be some technical feasibility, and oftentimes one of the 2 is lacking. So maybe there's no data, or you cannot model it very well because your data is a little bit off, or there's just no business value, and there's no priority to put this into production and start using it. So you need both in the end.
The companies they very frequently hire a type B data scientist that we call the builder, a person that knows, even when you don't have the data, knows how to collect it and engineer the features.
It's more machine learning engineer, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's just that also the profession is evolving into different subfields. Nowadays, this umbrella data scientist is very wide. So they hire a type B data scientist, a builder, a plumber, as we say, when they need actually someone to communicate the results and make good presentations, what would be a type A data scientist. or the opposite. They have very good type A data scientists, but they actually need the technical aspect to put it into production. Someone that works with code for production.
What type are you? Both?
I consider a type A.
And you?
Yeah, I think I'm both actually.
Both?
I'm still deciding.
Unicorn.
Yeah.
It's now growing.
Half. Yeah.
Yeah? Is it?
Yeah.
What makes you a good? What makes a good machine learning engineer in you?
I think knowing all the technical aspects, so knowing how to properly train a model, what mistakes to avoid, and also how to put stuff into production, maybe make it callable by an API, for example.
Yeah.
But I think it's equally important to be able to present your results and convince people in the business.
What are the
to
things
use this.
in the documentary that I found very good that's in there is the ethical part. So the ethics, the biases, as you said. Can you tell me a little bit about your work in both the classroom and at TomTom in this case, how you cope with ethics and fairness?
Yeah.
And what should the audience, so all the people watching this documentary, know about how we as a community work with fairness and ethics?
Yeah, so in TomTom, it's really the key pillar that we're built on is preserving privacy of our users. This is really important throughout the whole organization. And everyone is also challenging each other on this. And we also have a chief privacy officer in state for that. So we're really very thinking a lot about how to apply GDPR and what things we can do with our data and what we cannot do, while still trying to get business value out of the data that we have.
And fairness? It's kind of a new field.
Well, this is one of the aspects, the ethical aspects. So last year, for example, we started to have this in the classroom with the decision makers, the C-levels. We wanted them to not only be able to identify which projects are feasible for data science to solve. This is how you do a due diligence and how you find the technology that needs to be able to solve that specific problem. But then you need to find the profitable projects, and within the profitable projects, you need a person who identified the ethical projects as well. So it's actually a very much smaller intersection that is the feasible intersection, right? And we made a list of 5 items, 5 factors that should be included in your ethical guidelines related with specifically machine learning. And fairness is one of them, right? So you also have interpretability, you also have governance, you also have the impact on the future of work and data citizenship. So fairness is one of the things that we were actually being unfair in the past, but we recognized this 2 years ago because we started to analyze the data and collect data strategically to train the models.
What do you mean with data citizenship?
Well, this is when we have this available technology and people get aware that their privacy can be affected by tools that work with personalized interventions.
That
right?
their data lives in an application.
Exactly, or that you can be targeted with a very persuasive message if you share your data. But at the same time, that if you decide not to share, you also lose a lot of personalized services, right? So there is also a cost. It's quite similar to what we probably passed through when the first cars went in the streets, right? So you have to decide whether people need a driving license, yes or no. Also, when we started to have the most complex financial products, do I have to be aware of all the risks that this pension fund brings? Yes or no, right? So it's a similar thing now. Data citizenship is how do I make my citizens aware that there are risks and opportunities when they share their data with third parties.
So if we now focus at the audience, looking in the camera, and they are a bit of hesitant again towards data science, what's the convincing thing we can say to them? Please don't be afraid. We're ethical. How do we explain that as a community, Kia? Because it's all in the newspaper in the Netherlands, new leaks, all these.
Yeah, I think it's about education.
What newspaper do you read, Jeroen?
Ja, de Telegraaf natuurlijk.
It gets from the metro, like that.
Yeah, indeed, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's about education. So educating what we call the business on what can be done with machine learning and what are the possibilities, and then also educating them about the risk and the constraints, but at the same time at the possibilities that it can bring. And then of course, I mean, people in the business need to decide whether they want to do this or not.
Yeah, but we have to take into consideration that governance usually appears after the first applications, and we are at the stage that we are still building this.
Yes.
So we're about ready to move to the big room where the documentary will premiere. What has been produced is, well, to say the least, eye candy. If you look at it, it's very nice to watch, and some important themes are covered. It has been produced by Data IQ. Is this just a commercial production, or do you think that this will really make an impact on the way that data science is perceived, Kia?
I hope the latter, indeed. And I think that was the intention also of the documentary. I don't think Data IQ intended it to be a very commercial film towards their product. It doesn't seem like that. And and I hope that people in the field, but also outside of the field, will watch it and get a better understanding of what data and data science is.
Yeah, I think the Data IQ is a collaborative tool. They want to have more data citizens, right, at the company level. So the documentary helps, for example, the data teams to introduce these topics to other decision makers, and at the same time it demystifies many concepts. I was impressed with the quality of the research that the guys at Luminante they did. They really went deeper into the real definitions that needed to be clarified, and they created a good narrative for that.
Let's finish off.
Yeah, well, thanks a lot for joining and your contribution to the documentary.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for sharing your insights here today at the Big Data Expo in de Jaarbeurs Utrecht. And thanks for listening, everyone, and we look forward to airing the next one.
Okay, see you.
Bedankt voor het luisteren naar deze uitzending van de Dataloog podcast. Wil je automatisch wekelijkse podcast ontvangen? Klik dan op subscribe in jouw favoriete podcastprogramma. Vond je onze podcast leuk, goed, interessant of wellicht te veel enen en nullen? Laat een review achter of geef thumbs up. Heb je vragen of opmerkingen? Kijk dan ook eens op www.dedataloog.nl. Hier staan ook de show notes van alle uitzendingen. De studio van de Dataloog is gesponsord door het onderzoeksprogramma Urban Technology van de Hogeschool van Amsterdam. Alles wat we maken doen we onder Creative Commons. Je mag alles hergebruiken voor niet-commerciële doeleinden, zolang je ons als bron maar noemt. Volg ons op Twitter op @dedataloog. Graag tot de volgende keer en voor nu, tot data!